Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, first published in 1843, tells the transformative story of Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly older man who learns the true meaning of Christmas through encounters with the supernatural. Set in Victorian London, the novella explores generosity, redemption, and social justice themes. It uses a blend of rich storytelling, vivid imagery, and moral lessons to inspire a sense of compassion and humanity. Through 5 distinct sections, or staves, Dickens constructs a journey of self-awareness and change for his protagonist, illustrating how individual transformation can positively influence society. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Charles Dickens begins A Christmas Carol by firmly establishing that Jacob Marley, Ebenezer Scrooge's former business partner, is unequivocally dead. This opening declaration underscores the supernatural elements of the story that will unfold. Dickens writes, "Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that." This assertion sets the tone for the novella, blending elements of Gothic fiction with a moral allegory. Introduction to Ebenezer Scrooge. The narrative swiftly introduces Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly older man who is described in vivid and unflattering terms. Scrooge is a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, a man whose heart is as cold and unyielding as the winter weather around him. Dickens employs metaphor and imagery to emphasize Scrooge's miserliness, stating that the cold within him froze his old features. This characterization positions Scrooge as the antithesis of generosity and goodwill, 2 central themes of the novella. Scrooge's disdain for Christmas and human connection is evident in his interactions with others. He dismisses his cheerful nephew Fred, who arrives to wish him a Merry Christmas and invites him to Christmas dinner. Scrooge mocks Fred's festive spirit, arguing that Christmas is an excuse for idleness and extravagance. When Fred speaks of Christmas's joy and unity, Scrooge responds with his infamous refrain, "Bah! Humbug!" Scrooge's treatment of others. Scrooge's harshness extends beyond his family to all who cross his path. 2 gentlemen arrive at his office seeking donations for people experiencing poverty, explaining that many lack necessities during the holiday season. Scrooge coldly rebuffs their request, asking why low-income people cannot rely on workhouses and prisons. When informed that some would rather die than endure such conditions, Scrooge replies cruelly, "If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population." This moment highlights Scrooge's lack of empathy and Dickens' critique of societal attitudes toward people with low incomes. Scrooge's treatment of his clerk, Bob Cratchit, further illustrates his miserly and unkind nature. Cratchit, who works long hours in a freezing office, timidly asks for Christmas Day off. Scrooge begrudgingly agrees but insists that Cratchit arrive earlier the next morning, framing the holiday as a financial burden rather than a time for celebration. A gloomy evening. As night falls, Ebenezer Scrooge leaves his counting house, locking up for the day. The streets of London are enveloped in a thick, oppressive fog, a recurring motif in Dickens' works that reflects both the physical environment and Scrooge's inner state. The description, cold and shrouded in mist, mirrors Scrooge's emotional desolation. The atmosphere is heavy with Gothic overtones, setting the stage for future supernatural events. Scrooge walks through the narrow, dark streets of the world around him. Dickens vividly describes the scene, emphasizing the biting cold and the dimly lit passageways where gas lamps barely penetrate the fog. The chill in the air seems to emanate from Scrooge, a man so devoid of warmth and human connection that his presence amplifies the icy atmosphere. Dickens writes, "It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them." This description paints a vivid picture of Victorian London and underscores Scrooge's character's harshness, which contrasts sharply with the cheer and camaraderie of those braving the cold together. As Scrooge approaches his home, Dickens shifts his focus to the house itself, imbuing it with an air of mystery and foreboding. The building, once owned by Jacob Marley, is described as dark and dreary, mirroring Scrooge's solitary existence. Dickens emphasizes its lifelessness, noting that it had once echoed with the sounds of a busy life, but now it had fallen silent. The house is old, spacious, and neglected, with the faint signs of its former grandeur overshadowed by decay. Its disrepair reflects Scrooge's inner life, a soul untouched by warmth, joy, or love. The description of Scrooge unlocking his door is rich with Gothic imagery. As he inserts the key into the lock, he sees, to his astonishment, the face of Jacob Marley in the knocker. The transformation of an ordinary object into something spectral is a hallmark of Gothic fiction and serves as the first clear indication of the supernatural forces at play. Dickens masterfully builds tension in this moment, describing how the knocker's features change and take on Marley's likeness. It was not in impenetrable shadow, as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. The oddity of this simile adds to the unsettling nature of the vision, blending the grotesque with the mundane. Scrooge, however, quickly dismisses the apparition. True to his rational and materialistic nature, he attributes the vision to an overactive imagination or indigestion, famously muttering, "There's more of gravy than of grave about you." This moment reflects Scrooge's skepticism and unwillingness to acknowledge anything beyond the tangible world, a perspective that will be challenged throughout the novella. As Scrooge enters the house, the atmosphere grows even darker. The hallways are described as cavernous and ghostly, with shadows that seem to loom and shift in the dim light of his single candle. Dickens' use of sensory detail enhances the eerie mood. Scrooge hears the echo of his footsteps in the silence, emphasizing the vast emptiness of the home. The house feels less like a place of refuge and more like a tomb, isolating Scrooge from the outside world. Once inside his quarters, Scrooge locks the door behind him and makes his way to a small, sparsely furnished room. The contrast between the size of the house and the simplicity of Scrooge's living space underscores his frugality and detachment from any form of comfort or luxury. The room is cold, with a meager fire barely warming the air. Dickens writes, "Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it," a line that encapsulates Scrooge's character. His stinginess extends even to his comfort, and he finds satisfaction in avoiding expense. As Scrooge settles into his chair near the fire, the Gothic elements of the scene intensify. The flickering flames cast strange shadows on the walls, creating an almost spectral ambiance. Scrooge's mind begins to play tricks on him, a prelude to the supernatural encounters he is about to face. Dickens describes how the shadows shift and take on shapes, feeding into Scrooge's unease. With its silence and shadows, the house becomes an active participant in the story, heightening the sense of anticipation and dread. Scrooge's solitude in this gloomy setting reflects his life's choices. The coldness of the house mirrors the emotional void in Scrooge's heart, while the vast, empty spaces symbolize the opportunities for connection and joy he has squandered. Dickens uses this scene to emphasize the consequences of Scrooge's miserly and selfish ways. His wealth has not brought him comfort, and his isolation is both physical and emotional. The scene culminates in the sudden appearance of Marley's ghost, marking a dramatic shift from eerie anticipation to outright supernatural intervention. The spectral knocking, the rattling of chains, and the otherworldly appearance of Marley's ghostly figure shatter the uneasy silence, plunging Scrooge into a confrontation with his life's consequences. This pivotal moment bridges Scrooge's mundane existence and the spiritual journey that will ultimately transform him. The unsettling atmosphere thickens as Ebenezer Scrooge settles into his cold, dimly lit chambers. The faint crackle of the weak fire and the shadows cast by its flickering light create an eerie ambience, heightening Scrooge's unease. Though he initially tries to rationalize his discomfort, attributing it to fatigue or his imagination, the tension in the air is palpable. Dickens expertly builds suspense, using silence and shadow to foreshadow the dramatic arrival of Jacob Marley's ghost. Scrooge's solitary dinner, a bowl of gruel, is emblematic of his frugality and lack of indulgence, even in the most basic comforts. Eating alone, surrounded by the vast emptiness of his cavernous house, underscores his isolation. Dickens' meticulous description of this moment creates a sense of claustrophobia within the boundless space, emphasizing how Scrooge's choices have imprisoned him in a life devoid of connection or warmth. The room grows colder, a chill beyond the reach of Scrooge's already feeble fire. Dickens's description of the temperature change is physical and metaphorical, as the coldness mirrors the emotional frost that has characterized Scrooge's life. Suddenly, Scrooge hears a sound, soft at first, then growing louder. The noise, described as the clanking of chains, reverberates through the house, breaking the oppressive silence. Scrooge tries to dismiss the sound, clinging to his skepticism. He mutters, "Humbug still. I won't believe it." This declaration reflects Scrooge's rigid adherence to rationality, a defense mechanism against the unknown. However, the sound becomes undeniable. The clanking chains grow louder, accompanied by the dragging of heavy objects, suggesting the approach of something ominous and inescapable. When Jacob Marley's ghost finally appears, Dickens' description is vivid and unsettling. The ghost is a spectral version of the man Scrooge once knew, transparent yet unmistakably familiar. Marley is bound in long chains made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, and purses, symbols of his greed and materialism in life. The chains rattle with every movement, a constant reminder of the burden Marley now bears in death. Marley's face is pale and sorrowful, and his eyes pierce through Scrooge's. His expression conveys both torment and urgency, as though he has come to warn and plead. The ghost's appearance is described in a way that evokes pity and fear, compelling the reader to confront the consequences of a life lived without compassion or generosity. Though terrified, Scrooge initially resists believing in Marley's ghost. True to his character, he attempts to rationalize the apparition, dismissing it as a hallucination caused by indigestion. "You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato," he says, desperately clinging to his skepticism. This moment adds a touch of dark humor to the otherwise tense scene, showcasing Scrooge's stubbornness and denial. However, Marley's ghost refuses to be dismissed. His presence grows more imposing, and his chains rattling becomes more forceful. The sheer weight of the chains seems to pull Marley down, a physical manifestation of his spiritual torment. Marley's voice is hollow and haunting, resonating with the sorrow and regret of a man who squandered his life on meaningless pursuits. His words, though measured, are filled with urgency as he begins to deliver his warning to Scrooge. Marley's chains and their meaning. The chains Marley wears are not merely physical objects. They are symbolic of the life he led. Each link represents a selfish act, a missed opportunity for kindness, or a moment of greed. Marley explains, "I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on my own free will, and of my own free will, I wore it." This powerful statement underscores the moral message of the novella. Our actions in life have lasting consequences, shaping not only our earthly existence, but also our spiritual fate. Through Marley's chains, Dickens critiques society's obsession with wealth and material success. The chains are made of financial objects, cash boxes, keys, and ledgers, highlighting how Marley's focus on profit has bound him to death. This imagery serves as a starting to Scrooge, whose life mirrors Marley's in many ways. The sight of the chains forces Scrooge to confront the potential legacy of his choices. Marley's torment. Marley reveals the torment he endures in the afterlife. Unlike living, he is condemned to roam the earth without purpose, witnessing the suffering of others but being unable to intervene. His ghostly existence is one of regret, burdened by the realization that he failed to use his wealth and influence for good. He laments, "No space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunity misused." This haunting declaration reinforces the novella's theme of redemption and the urgency of seizing opportunities for kindness and compassion while alive. Marley's sorrowful description of his afterlife is both personal and universal. He speaks for himself and all those who prioritize self-interest over humanity. The sight of other ghosts outside Scrooge's window, similarly bound in chains, adds to the weight of Marley's warning. Wailing in despair, these spirits represent the countless lives wasted pursuing material gain. Despite their desire, their inability to help those in need reminds us of the consequences of neglecting one's moral duties. The prophecy of the three spirits. Marley visits Scrooge to warn him of his fate and offer him a chance at redemption. He tells Scrooge that three spirits will visit him over the next 3 nights: the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and yet to come. Each spirit will guide Scrooge on a journey of self-discovery, forcing him to confront the impact of his actions and inspiring him to change his ways. Marley's warning is delivered with a sense of finality. He emphasizes that this is Scrooge's last chance to avoid the same torment he endures. The prophecy is both a threat and a promise, leaving Scrooge with a glimmer of hope amidst the fear. Marley's parting words, filled with urgency and sorrow, echo in Scrooge's mind as the ghost vanishes into the night. Scrooge's reaction. Left alone in the darkness, Scrooge is shaken to his core. The weight of Marley's visit lingers, and for the first time, cracks begin to appear in Scrooge's hardened exterior. Though he tries to dismiss the experience as a dream, his fear and unease suggest that Marley's message has struck a chord. As Scrooge retires to bed, his mind is filled with apprehension about the spirits to come. Themes and symbolism in Marley's Visit 1. The consequences of greed. Marley's chains symbolize the burden of a life consumed by greed, serving as a warning to Scrooge and a critique of societal values. 2. Redemption and free will. Marley's declaration that his actions forged his chains highlights the role of free will in shaping one's fate. 3. The supernatural as a moral catalyst. Marley's ghost introduces the supernatural to force Scrooge to confront his actions and consider the possibility of change. 4. Isolation and regret. Marley's torment reflects the isolation and regret resulting from a life without compassion or connection. Stave 1 sets the stage for Scrooge's journey of redemption by establishing his character as a miserly, isolated man, devoid of empathy. The arrival of Marley's ghost and the prophecy of the three spirits introduce the central conflict. Scrooge must confront his past, present, and future to avoid a grim fate. Dickens masterfully blends Gothic elements with moral themes, creating a compelling opening that draws readers into the story. Stave 2, the first of the three spirits. Stave 2 begins with Ebenezer Scrooge waking suddenly, unsure whether it is day or night. His disorientation is heightened when the clock strikes 1, and he remembers Marley's prophecy. He will be visited by the first of three spirits. Scrooge waits anxiously until his room is lit and the ghost of Christmas past appears. Appearance of the ghost. The arrival of the ghost of Christmas past marks the beginning of Ebenezer Scrooge's spiritual journey, and Dickens uses vivid and symbolic imagery to describe the spirit. When the clock strikes 1, the anticipated visit begins. Scrooge is startled by a sudden flood of light, which seems to emanate from beyond the physical world, illuminating his previously dim and cold chamber. This light is not harsh or blinding, but soft and otherworldly, creating an atmosphere of mystery and expectation. When Scrooge sees the ghost of Christmas past, its appearance defies ordinary description. The ghost is familiar and unfamiliar, human yet not entirely of this world. Dickens describes the spirit as resembling a child, yet also an old man, giving it an ethereal and ageless quality. Its features are youthful and delicate, yet its hair is white with age, symbolizing the timeless nature of memory. This paradoxical appearance reflects the duality of the past. It is simultaneously distant and immediate, old yet ever present in one's consciousness. The ghost's physical form is described as fluctuating, almost as if it is not fully solid. Its outline seems to shimmer and shift, giving it an ephemeral quality. This instability mirrors the fleeting and intangible nature of memory, which can be vivid one moment and faint the next. Dickens writes, "It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium." This description evokes a sense of wonder and unease, drawing Scrooge and the reader into the spirit's mysterious presence. The ghost's light, the ghost of Christmas. Past's most striking feature is the light radiating from its head. This glowing light, often compared to a candle flame, is a powerful symbol of illumination and truth. It represents the clarity and insight that come from examining one's past, shedding light on the shadows of forgotten or suppressed memories. The light is not constant, but flickers, suggesting the fragility of memory and the effort required to bring the past into focus. The ghost carries a cap shaped like a candle extinguisher, which it uses to cover the light when necessary. This cap symbolizes memory suppression and the desire to avoid confronting painful truths. Scrooge immediately notices the cap and seems drawn to it, likely because he has spent much of his life avoiding reflection and suppressing his emotional past. The interaction between the ghost's light and the cap reflects the tension between revelation and denial, a central theme of Scrooge's journey. The ghost's voice and presence. The Ghost of Christmas Past speaks with a gentle but commanding voice, described as soft, yet firm. Its tone is not harsh or accusatory, but carries an air of authority and wisdom. The spirit's voice, like its appearance, embodies a sense of timelessness, as though it speaks from a place beyond human comprehension. This calm and measured demeanor contrasts with Scrooge's initial skepticism and agitation, emphasizing the ghost's role as a guide rather than a judge. The ghost's presence is both unsettling and comforting. Although Scrooge is initially taken aback by its strange appearance, he does not feel threatened. Instead, the ghost exudes an aura of purpose and inevitability, as if its visit is a natural and necessary part of Scrooge's transformation. This sense of inevitability is reinforced when the ghost extends its hand and instructs Scrooge to rise and follow. Though reluctant, Scrooge feels compelled to obey, unable to resist the pull of the spirit's otherworldly authority. Symbolism of the ghost. The Ghost of Christmas Past is rich with symbolic meaning, embodying the theme of memory and its power to shape the present. Its youthful and aged features represent the continuity of time, reminding Scrooge that his past is integral to who he is. The fluctuating nature of its form reflects the elusive and subjective quality of memory, which can be vivid or faint depending on one's emotional state. The light emanating from the ghost symbolizes enlightenment and self-awareness. It reminds us that understanding the past is essential for personal growth and transformation. The cap, by contrast, represents denial and the suppression of painful memories. Scrooge's initial desire to extinguish the light reflects his resistance to self-examination and his reluctance to confront the emotional wounds of his past. The ghost's role as a guide, rather than a tormentor, underscores the purpose of its visit, to help Scrooge reflect on his life and recognize the patterns and choices that have led him to his current state. Its calm and gentle demeanor suggests that the journey through the past, while challenging, is ultimately an act of compassion and an opportunity for redemption. Scrooge's reaction. Scrooge's initial response to the ghost involves curiosity and apprehension. He is intrigued by its appearance and the light it emits, but remains wary of its purpose. Scrooge's instinctive interest in the cap reflects his discomfort with self-reflection, as he would rather suppress the light of truth than face it directly. However, the ghost's calm authority disarms Scrooge, and he begins to accept that the journey is unavoidable. As the ghost extends its hand, Scrooge hesitates but ultimately complies, a small but significant step toward his transformation. His willingness to follow the ghost marks the beginning of his confrontation with the memories and emotions he has long avoided. Themes in the ghost's appearance. 1. Memory and reflection. The ghost's form and light symbolize the importance of examining the past to understand oneself and initiate change. 2. Illumination versus suppression. The interplay between the ghost's light and its cap reflects the tension between revealing truths and suppressing painful memories. 3. Timelessness and continuity. The ghost's youthful and aged features emphasize the enduring impact of the past on the present and future. 4. Gentle guidance. The ghost's calm demeanor and role as a guide highlight the journey's compassionate nature, which seeks to enlighten rather than punish. The journey into Scrooge's past. The spirit leads Scrooge on a journey through his memories, returning him to key moments in his life. The scenes are described with vivid detail, immersing Scrooge and the reader in the emotions and experiences of his past. 1. Childhood isolation. Scrooge sees himself as a lonely boy left behind at school during Christmas. While other children go home to celebrate with their families, young Scrooge remains alone, seeking solace in books like Robinson Crusoe. This scene evokes deep sympathy for Scrooge, revealing how his childhood neglect contributed to his cold and guarded nature. Overcome with emotion, Scrooge whispers, "Poor boy," for the first time showing compassion, even if only for his younger self. Second reunion with his sister Fan. The next scene shows Scrooge's younger sister Fan arriving at the school to bring him home for Christmas. Fan's love and excitement warm the memory, and Scrooge recalls her affectionately. However, her early death and the fact that she left behind a son, Scrooge's nephew Fred, remind him of the family connections he has since neglected. 3. The joy of Fezziwig's celebration. The spirit transports Scrooge to a lively Christmas party hosted by his former employer, Mr. Fezziwig. The scene is pure joy, with music, dancing, and laughter filling the room. Fezziwig's kindness and generosity starkly contrast Scrooge's treatment of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. Scrooge reflects on how little it costs Fezziwig to spread such happiness and begins to understand the value of kindness over wealth. Lost love and regret. The spirit then shows Scrooge one of the most painful moments of his life, the end of his engagement to Belle, a woman he once loved deeply. Belle releases Scrooge from their engagement, lamenting that he has become consumed by his desire for wealth. She tells him, "Another idol has displaced me, a golden one." The scene reveals how Scrooge's growing obsession with money drove away his chance at love and happiness. In a final, heart-rending vision, Scrooge sees Belle happily married with children in later years. Her home is warm and filled with the joy of family life, starkly contrasting Scrooge's lonely existence. Scrooge is devastated, recognizing that his choices have left him isolated and without the kind of love and connection he could have had. He begs the spirit to take him away, unable to bear the pain of his memories. Return to the present. The ghost of Christmas. Past extinguishes its light with the cap it carries, and Scrooge finds himself back in his bedroom. He is emotionally exhausted, his heart heavy with regret, but also stirred by the first glimmers of self-awareness. The experience has begun to break through his defenses, planting the seeds for change. Themes and symbolism in Stave 2. 1. The power of memory. The journey into Scrooge's past demonstrates how formative experiences shape our character and values. By confronting his memories, Scrooge begins to understand the roots of his behavior. 2. Regret and responsibility. The scenes of lost love and missed opportunities highlight Scrooge's regrets, emphasizing the importance of choices and their long-term consequences. 3. Generosity versus greed. The joy of Fezziwig's celebration contrasts with Scrooge's miserly ways, illustrating the profound impact of kindness and generosity. 4. Family and connection. The memories of Fan and Belle underscore the importance of family and relationships, which Scrooge has neglected in his pursuit of wealth. Key takeaways from Stave 2. Scrooge's journey into his past reveals the emotional scars and choices that led to his current state. The scenes of childhood loneliness, lost love, and Fezziwig's generosity evoke sympathy for Scrooge and a sense of accountability. By confronting his past, Scrooge begins to see the possibility of a different path, setting the stage for further transformation. Stave 3, the second of the three spirits. As Stave 3 begins, Ebenezer Scrooge awakens to the sound of the clock striking once again, signaling the arrival of the second spirit, foretold by Jacob Marley. This time, Scrooge finds his room transformed, glowing with warmth and festivity, in stark contrast to its usual cold and barren state. The transformation reflects the joyous and abundant nature of the Ghost of Christmas Present, who soon makes its grand entrance. The appearance of the Ghost of Christmas Present. The Ghost of Christmas Present is striking, embodying the essence of festivity and goodwill. It is a towering and robust presence, draped in a green robe trimmed with white fur, symbolizing life's vitality and generosity's purity. The spirit's head is adorned with a holly wreath, intertwined with shining icicles, blending the themes of nature's endurance and the festive season. In one hand, The spirit holds a glowing torch, shaped like a cornucopia, representing abundance and the spreading of joy. The ghost's demeanor is jovial and inviting, a stark contrast to Scrooge's usually cold and miserly attitude. Its booming laughter fills the room, radiating warmth and goodwill. This spirit represents the Christmas season's fleeting but powerful spirit of generosity, unity, and celebration. Scrooge's interaction with the spirit. The ghost greets Scrooge warmly and instructs him to touch its robe. Then, the ghost invites him to journey through the world and witness how Christmas is celebrated. Now more open to the lessons of the spirits, Scrooge complies without hesitation. The ghost reminds Scrooge that the journey is meant to enlighten him, not punish him, reinforcing the compassionate nature of these supernatural interventions. The journey with the ghost of Christmas present. A view of festive streets. The spirit first takes Scrooge to the bustling streets of London, which are alive with the energy of Christmas morning. The air is filled with the sounds of church bells and cheerful chatter as people prepare for the holiday feast. Dickens vividly describes the scene: snow-covered streets, shop windows brimming with treats, and children playing with joyful abandon. Scrooge observes grocers and butchers working tirelessly to meet the demand for festive delicacies, their efforts marked by camaraderie and good cheer. The spirit sprinkles liquid drops from its torch onto the food and people below, spreading blessings of peace and joy. The torch's magic is particularly effective in resolving minor disputes, such as quarrels between two men in the marketplace. This act symbolizes the unifying power of the Christmas spirit, which fosters harmony and goodwill even in moments of discord. The Cratchit family. The spirit then leads Scrooge to the humble home of Bob Cratchit, his underpaid and overworked clerk. Despite their poverty, the Cratchits are shown as a loving and close-knit family, embodying the true meaning of Christmas. The house is modest, but filled with warmth and joy, thanks to the family's shared love and gratitude for one another. Bob Cratchit enters with Tiny Tim, his frail and disabled son, perched on his shoulder. Tiny Tim's innocence and resilience immediately captures Scrooge's attention. Bob lovingly assists Tim into his seat, and the family gathers to share their simple yet festive meal. The meal consists of a small goose, potatoes, and pudding, a feast that the Cratchits savor with great delight, despite its modesty. Tiny Tim's famous words, "God bless us, everyone," resonate deeply with Scrooge, who begins to feel an unfamiliar sense of compassion and concern. The spirit informs Scrooge that Tiny Tim's health is precarious and will not survive without proper care. Scrooge, deeply affected, asks if the boy will live. The ghost delivers a somber response. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. The spirit further chastises Scrooge by echoing his earlier words. If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Scrooge, filled with guilt, is unable to respond. The joys and struggles of ordinary people. The spirit next shows Scrooge how ordinary people, despite their hardships, find joy and togetherness during Christmas. They visit miners working deep underground, who gather to sing carols and share stories of home. The scene shifts to a lighthouse on a rocky shore, where two keepers celebrate with humble food and heartfelt toasts. Finally, they witness sailors aboard a ship in the middle of the sea who find solace in their shared camaraderie despite being far from their families. These scenes highlight the universality of the Christmas spirit, which transcends social and economic boundaries. Even in the most challenging circumstances, people come together to celebrate, demonstrating the resilience of the human spirit. Fred's Christmas Party. The spirit takes Scrooge to his nephew Fred's home, where a lively Christmas party is in full swing. Fred and his friends enjoy games, laughter, and music, creating a warm and cheerful atmosphere. Despite his uncle's earlier scorn, Fred's kindness and good humor are evident as he proposes a toast to Scrooge. This act of generosity and forgiveness leaves Scrooge both humbled and reflective. The partygoers engage in light-hearted banter about Scrooge, mocking his miserly ways but not out of malice. Fred defends his uncle, expressing hope that Scrooge might someday embrace the joys of Christmas. Observing this scene, Scrooge begins to feel a pang of regret for his dismissive treatment of Fred and his isolation from such joyous gatherings. Ignorance and want. As the journey nears its end, the spirit reveals two emaciated children hiding beneath its robe, a boy named Ignorance and a girl named Want. These children are described as wretched and grotesque, with hollow eyes and claw-like hands. They represent the societal ills of poverty and ignorance, which Dickens sought to address through his works. The spirit warns Scrooge to beware of both children, especially Ignorance, as it poses the greatest threat to humanity. The ghost's dire words, doom, are written on the boy's brow, symbolizing the catastrophic consequences of neglecting education and social welfare. This harrowing moment reminds readers of the novella's social critique, urging them to recognize and address the root causes of suffering and inequality. Scrooge is deeply shaken by the sight of these children, and before he can question the spirit further, the clock strikes midnight. The Ghost of Christmas. Present begins to fade, signaling the arrival of the final spirit. Themes in Stave 3. 1. The power of generosity. The scenes of festive celebration, from the Cratchit household to Fred's party, emphasize how generosity and love can create joy and connection, even in adversity. 2. Social responsibility. The depiction of ignorance and want underscores Dickens' critique of societal neglect and the urgent need for compassion and reform. 3. The universality of Christmas. By showcasing celebrations across different social and economic settings, Dickens highlights the unifying nature of the Christmas spirit. The consequences of neglect, Tiny Tim's fragile health, and the haunting images of ignorance and want serve as powerful reminders of the impact of selfishness and indifference. Key takeaways from Stave 3. Scrooge begins to understand the value of generosity, compassion, and human connection through the spirit's lessons. The Cratchit family's joy despite their poverty forces Scrooge to confront his lack of gratitude and empathy. Ignorance and want starkly warn about the societal consequences of neglecting the vulnerable. Scrooge's growing awareness and guilt mark a significant step in his transformation, setting the stage for the final spirit's revelations. Stave 4. The Last of the Spirits. Stave 4 begins with a profound shift in tone and atmosphere. After witnessing the warmth and joy of Christmas in Stave 3, Ebenezer Scrooge, now, encounters the foreboding and silent ghost of Christmas yet to come. The spirit is shrouded in black, resembling the Grim Reaper, and exudes an aura of dread. Dickens uses this stark contrast to emphasize the gravity of the lessons Scrooge is about to learn, as the final spirit reveals the consequences of his life choices and the future that awaits if he does not change. The appearance of the ghost. The Ghost of Christmas. Yet to come is the most fearsome of the three spirits. Its form is entirely obscured by a dark, hooded robe, leaving only a skeletal hand visible. This anonymity enhances its ominous presence, as Scrooge cannot see its face or discern its intentions. The spirit does not speak. It communicates only through gestures, which forces Scrooge to interpret its messages and confront his fears directly. Scrooge is immediately overwhelmed by the ghost's silence and the chilling atmosphere it creates. Unlike the previous spirits, who offered guidance with varying degrees of warmth, this spirit's solemn and mysterious demeanor suggests finality and judgment. Though terrified, Scrooge is determined to learn from the spirit and pleads with it to show him mercy through its lessons. The unnamed man's death. The spirit leads Scrooge through a series of scenes, beginning with a group of businessmen discussing the recent death of an unnamed man. Their conversation is marked by indifference and mild amusement as they speculate about the dead man's wealth and funeral arrangements. One man remarks that the funeral will likely be sparsely attended unless food is provided as an incentive. The lack of compassion and respect for the deceased underscores his isolation and the shallow nature of his relationships. Scrooge is disturbed by their callousness, but does not yet realize that the man they are discussing is himself. He wonders why the spirit has shown him this scene and asks to see someone who felt emotion at the man's death. The pawn shop scene. The The spirit takes Scrooge to a seedy pawn shop in a poor part of town. Here, three individuals, a charwoman, a laundress, and an undertaker's assistant, gather to sell items they have stolen from the deceased man's home. Their conversation is laced with greed and contempt as they justify their actions, claiming the man had no one who cared for him and would not miss the items in death. The stolen goods include bed curtains, silverware, and even the shirt meant to dress the corpse. The scene is both grotesque and pitiful, reflecting the complete disregard for the dead man's dignity. Scrooge, horrified, begins to sense the moral void in the deceased's life and begs the spirit to show him a more compassionate reaction to someone's passing. The Cratchit family's grief. The spirit then takes Scrooge to the Cratchit household, where the atmosphere is markedly different from the warmth and joy of Stave 3. The family is quiet and subdued, mourning the loss of Tiny Tim. Bob Cratchit, who was previously a figure of strength and optimism, is now grief-stricken, though he strives to maintain hope for his family. He speaks of visiting Tiny Tim's grave and resolving to cherish his memory. The sight of the Cratchit family's sorrow deeply affects Scrooge. He realizes the profound impact of Tiny Tim's death on those who loved him and begins to see the importance of his own role in shaping the lives of others. Scrooge begs the spirit to tell him whether this future is set in stone or can be altered. The neglected grave. The final scene is the most harrowing. The spirit leads Scrooge to a desolate graveyard, shrouded in fog and silence. The cemetery is unkempt, its headstones covered in moss and dirt, symbolizing neglect and abandonment. The spirit points to a grave, prompting Scrooge to approach it with trembling hands. Scrooge hesitates, but eventually clears the headstone to reveal his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. The realization strikes him like a thunderbolt. He is the unloved and forgotten man whose death was met with indifference and greed. The grave represents the culmination of a life lived without compassion, connection, or purpose. Overwhelmed with fear and regret, Scrooge falls to his knees and pleads with the spirit. He promises to change his ways and embrace generosity, kindness, and the Christmas spirit every day. His desperation is palpable as he asks whether the shadows of this future can be altered or if his fate is sealed. The ghost remains silent, but points to the grave one last time before fading into darkness. Scrooge is left alone, consumed by the weight of his revelations. Themes in Stave 4. 1. Mortality and legacy. The stave confronts Scrooge with the inevitability of death and forces him to consider the legacy he will leave behind. The indifference shown toward his death reflects the emptiness of a life focused solely on wealth and self-interest. 2. Isolation and connection. The scenes of the pawn shop and the graveyard highlight the consequences of a life lived in isolation. Scrooge's lack of meaningful relationships leaves him vulnerable to being forgotten and exploited after death. 3. The impact of choices. The Cratchit family's grief over Tiny Tim's death underscores the interconnectedness of human lives. Scrooge's actions, or inaction, have far-reaching effects on others. The potential for change. Scrooge's plea for redemption reflects the novella's central theme. It is never too late to change and make amends. The spirit's silence leaves the question of whether change is possible for Scrooge unresolved, heightening the tension. Character development of Scrooge. Stave 4 marks a pivotal moment in Scrooge's transformation. His fear and guilt peak as he confronts the stark reality of his future. Unlike in the earlier staves, where Scrooge often resisted or rationalized the spirit's lessons, here he is fully receptive, recognizing the urgency of changing his ways. Scrooge's emotional response to Tiny Tim's death and the Cratchit family's grief reveals his growing empathy. He begins to see the value of human connection and the pain caused by his neglect. By the end of the stave, Scrooge is no longer the cold-hearted miser introduced in Stave 1, but a man desperate for redemption and eager to make amends. Key scenes and their symbolism. 1. The businessman's indifference. This scene symbolizes the emptiness of wealth without compassion. The businessman's casual discussion of the unnamed man's death highlights the futility of accumulating riches at the expense of relationships. 2. The pawn shop. This scene's grotesque nature underscores humanity's degradation when greed and selfishness go unchecked. The stolen items, including the shirt intended for the corpse, symbolize the complete lack of dignity afforded to the deceased. 3. The Cratchit household. The loss of Tiny Tim represents the consequences of societal neglect and personal inaction. The Cratchit's grief serves as a stark contrast to the indifference shown toward Scrooge's death. The graveyard. The neglected grave powerfully symbolizes Scrooge's legacy, a life forgotten and unloved. It forces Scrooge to confront the ultimate consequences of his choices and inspires his vow to change. Takeaways from Stave 4. Fear as a catalyst for change. Scrooge's fear of his own mortality and the legacy he will leave behind propels him toward transformation. The importance of human connection. The stark contrast between the Cratchit's grief and the businessmen's indifference underscores the value of relationships over material wealth. The power of redemption. Scrooge's desperate plea for a second chance highlights the novella's central message. It is never too late to change and embrace a life of kindness and generosity. Stave 5. The end of it. Stave 5 of A Christmas Carol is the climactic and joyous conclusion to Ebenezer Scrooge's transformative journey, having faced the harrowing revelations of the ghost of Christmas. Yet to come, Scrooge awakens on Christmas morning as a changed man. This chapter captures the full extent of Scrooge's redemption as he embraces the Christmas spirit and resolves to lead a life of kindness, generosity, and human connection. Dickens masterfully contrasts the gloom and fear of the earlier staves with a tone of exuberance and renewal, emphasizing the novella's themes of hope and redemption. Scrooge awakens with joyful realization. Scrooge's awakening marks a pivotal moment in his transformation, the dark foreboding of the ghost of Christmas. Yet to come gives way to the bright hope of the present. As Scrooge opens his eyes, the descriptions of his emotions are rich and full of life. He begins laughing, a sound so unfamiliar to him that he hardly recognizes it. Dickens captures the sheer vitality of this moment. Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. This laughter is significant. It is not merely an expression of relief, but a symbol of rebirth. For the first time, Scrooge is experiencing the joy of being alive, unburdened by the chains of his past or the fear of his future. His room, once a place of isolation and gloom, now seems filled with light and possibility. Even his interactions with the objects around him, his bedposts, the window, the clock, are filled with delight as he embraces the present moment with childlike wonder. Scrooge's immediate acts of kindness. Scrooge's transformation is immediately evident in his actions. He wastes no time correcting his past misdeeds and spreading joy to those around him. The decision to send the prize turkey to the Cratchit family is practical and symbolic. It is practical because it addresses a real need, ensuring that the Cratchits can enjoy a proper Christmas feast, and symbolic because it represents Scrooge's commitment to generosity and humility. The delivery of the turkey is handled anonymously, demonstrating Scrooge's sincere intentions. This is not an act for recognition or self-aggrandizement. It is purely about giving. Dickens describes Scrooge's delight in imagining the Cratchit's surprise, particularly Bob's reaction. This starkly contrasts Scrooge, who once begrudged Bob even a day off. Now, Scrooge takes genuine pleasure in bringing happiness to others. The transformed streets of London. When Scrooge steps outside, his transformation extends beyond himself to his perception of the world. The streets of London, previously described as cold and unwelcoming, now appear vibrant and alive with the spirit of Christmas. Scrooge warmly and sincerely greets everyone he passes, wishing them a Merry Christmas. This outward expression of joy reflects Scrooge's inner transformation. He no longer views people with suspicion or disdain, but sees them as fellow humans to connect with and celebrate. Dickens writes, "Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them. for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. This moment underscores Scrooge's courage and self-assurance in embracing change. He is no longer concerned with how others perceive him. He focuses on living purposefully and kindly. Reconciliation with Fred Scrooge's decision to attend his nephew Fred's Christmas party is a moment of profound reconciliation. Fred, who had always extended an open invitation despite Scrooge's scorn, represents the unconditional love and forgiveness of family. When Scrooge arrives, Fred is astonished but overjoyed, welcoming his uncle without hesitation. The party is lively, filled with games, music, and laughter. Scrooge, who once dismissed such gatherings as frivolous, now fully participates, reveling in the joy of human connection. Dickens describes him laughing, playing games like Blind Man's Bluff, and even joining in the singing. This newfound sense of playfulness and camaraderie highlights the extent of Scrooge's transformation. Fred's wife, who had previously harbored some resentment toward Scrooge, is also charmed by his sincerity and good humor. The scene is a testament to the healing power of forgiveness and the importance of family bonds. By engaging with Fred and his friends, Scrooge reclaims a part of himself that had been lost to isolation and bitterness. The Cratchit household, a beacon of joy. The Cratchit family serves as the story's heart, and Scrooge's efforts to support them symbolize his commitment to making amends. When Bob Cratchit arrives at work the day after Christmas, Scrooge initially pretends to be his old grumpy self. This moment of playful misdirection sets up one of the most heartwarming scenes in the novella. Scrooge suddenly announces that he is raising Bob's salary, leaving the clerk stunned. He promises to assist the Cratchit family in every way possible and ensure that Tiny Tim receives the care he needs. This act of generosity is not limited to financial support. It reflects a deeper commitment to nurturing relationships and taking responsibility for the well-being of others. The transformation in the Cratchit's fortunes mirrors Scrooge's own redemption. Tiny Tim, who once seemed destined for an untimely death, thrives under Scrooge's care. The boy's survival and happiness become a living testament to the power of compassion and generosity. Scrooge's ongoing transformation. Dickens emphasizes that Scrooge's change is not a fleeting resolution, but a profound and lasting transformation. The narrator assures readers that Scrooge became a man of integrity and kindness, fully embracing the lessons of the spirits. He is described as a benefactor to the community, a supportive employer, and a loving friend. Scrooge's dedication to living a life of purpose and connection is evident in his actions throughout the year, not just during Christmas. The narrator concludes, "And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well if any man alive possessed the knowledge." This final line underscores the idea that the spirit of Christmas is not confined to a single day, but is a way of life characterized by generosity, gratitude, and compassion. Themes and symbolism in Stave 5. 1. Redemption and renewal. Scrooge's transformation illustrates that it is never too late to change and embrace a life of kindness and connection. His actions demonstrate the redemptive power of self-awareness and accountability. 2. The joy of giving. Scrooge discovers the profound happiness that comes from selfless generosity. Whether material or emotional, giving becomes a central part of his newfound identity. 3. Community and connection. The scenes with Fred and the Cratchits emphasize the importance of relationships and shared experiences in creating a meaningful life. The spirit of Christmas. Scrooge's commitment to embodying the values of Christmas, generosity, compassion, and goodwill, serves as a timeless reminder of the holiday's significance. Character development of Scrooge. Scrooge's character undergoes a dramatic transformation in Stave 5, marking the culmination of his journey. The once cold, miserly man now embodies warmth and generosity. His newfound joy and humility are evident in his interactions with others, from the boy delivering the turkey to Fred and Bob Cratchit. Scrooge's willingness to embrace change and take responsibility for his actions demonstrates the power of self-awareness and the importance of acting on one's values. Key moments and their significance. 1. The awakening. Scrooge's realization that he is alive and has a second chance underscores the novella's theme of hope and renewal. 2. The prize turkey. This act of generosity symbolizes Scrooge's immediate embrace of the Christmas spirit and his desire to bring joy to others. 3. Fred's party. Scrooge's reconciliation with his family highlights the importance of forgiveness and the value of human connection. 4. Bob Cratchit's salary. By supporting the Cratchit family, Scrooge redeems himself and ensures a brighter future for Tiny Tim. Takeaways from Stave 5. Scrooge's transformation is a powerful reminder that it is never too late to change and that small acts of kindness can have far-reaching effects. The stave reinforces the themes of generosity, community, and redemption, showing how one person's actions can bring joy and hope to others. Dickens concludes the novella with a sense of optimism and warmth, leaving readers with a lasting impression of the transformative power of the Christmas spirit. The final stave of A Christmas Carol showcases Ebenezer Scrooge's complete transformation. He evolves from a miserly, isolated figure into a man who embodies the values of generosity, compassion, and community. Dickens conveys a powerful message through his redemption. It is never too late to change and make amends. Scrooge's journey highlights the importance of human connection, the joy of giving, and the enduring spirit of Christmas. His acts of kindness ripple outward, improving not only his own life, but also the lives of those around him, particularly the Cratchit family and his nephew Fred. By the novella's end, Scrooge becomes a symbol of hope and renewal. His story reminds us that redemption is always within reach, provided we are willing to confront our past, embrace the present, and act compassionately toward others. Dickens' timeless tale continues to inspire readers with its universal themes of love, forgiveness, and the transformative power of the Christmas spirit. If you've enjoyed this summary of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, let its timeless message inspire you today. Reflect on the lessons of kindness, generosity, and compassion in your own life. How can you make a difference in the lives of those around you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful summaries of classic and inspiring books. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts on the story and let us know how Scrooge's transformation resonates with you. Remember, it's never too late to spread joy and positivity like Scrooge did. Together, we can keep the spirit of Christmas alive every day of the year. Stay tuned for more summaries, and as Tiny Tim famously said, God bless us, everyone.